The United States isn't the only country in the world with a slew of top-secret black aerospace projects. In fact, some of the more insane ideas came from the other side of the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union. This is the ultimate list of top-secret Soviet projects that you have probably never heard of. Starting off our list with a bang, pun intended, is the M25 Sonic Boom plane. This aircraft was designed with one thing in mind: flying low and fast over a battlefield, generating a massive shockwave of air in its wake. The concept would use the sound compression of the sonic boom to disable troops on the ground without destroying the Earth elements, the perfect deadly weapon for conquering the world. The M25 was to be the first and only aircraft designed to use its sonic boom to devastate these enemy troops in an open terrain battlefield. But like a dog that's all bark and no bite, it never eventuated. But this wouldn't be the only aircraft you could hear coming. Next up, we have possibly one of the most imaginary aircraft ever developed, what I've dubbed the Soviet helicarrier, the VVP-6. Cruising over the deep Siberian wilderness is a terror that defies imagination. Its 6 rotor blades, powered by 24 turbofans, generate an inhuman sound as it prepares to launch its 6 nuclear-tipped surface-to-air missiles. With mobility, range, and the ability to deploy anywhere in the world, even in the sky, the vast territory of the USSR is finally safe from Western intruders. But that's not all. For the situation where offensive abilities are required, the platform can also be swapped out to carry troops, supplies, or even a basing platform for several Yak-38 VTOL fighter jets, making this 20th century helicopter a real-life helicarrier. But we're only getting started with the insanity. Modern Russian research and development is far from spending millions on more wacky things like the VVP helicarrier. But it's not just them. Costs have been rising for all of us, with inflation devaluing our money at the same time. However, one asset was recently described as extremely resilient, with imports and exports set to hit record levels by the end of the year. And it's this same asset that Masterworks has used for the past 3 years to hand back real results to their members. And I'm talking about fine art. Masterworks files multi-million-dollar paintings with the SEC, splitting them up into shares. Masterworks doesn't do crypto or NFTs, these are actual paintings like Picasso and Banksy. And all of Masterworks' filings for their paintings are linked in the description and at sec.gov. Masterworks just pulled off another strategic exit at the end of November, handing back 13.9% net returns to their investors. That brings them to 9 exits so far, 4 of them in the last 3 months alone. These 4 sales returned 13, 17, 21, and 33% net. It's no wonder Masterworks paintings have sold out in minutes, but you can get priority access right away by clicking the link in the description. Back to the show. A secret Soviet project from the late 50s that could have been the fastest military aircraft ever built. So fast that even the SR-71 wouldn't have been able to catch it. Flying at hypersonic speed, or Mach 5, an awe-inspiring height of 100,000 feet, it would have the simple name of the DSB-LK, which stands for Long Range Strategic Bomber Flying Wing. This craft would be built out of pure titanium with a crew of 4 on board, and it could fly anywhere in the world as the ultimate strategic deterrent. Plus, all of its body were small remote-controlled turrets just in case it got to any dogfights. But just like many of the others on this list, this incredible Russian aircraft was never built. The AN-225 was just the beginning. Engineers had big plans for the aircraft, and by big, we mean huge. Meet the AN-325 and its bigger brother, the Antonov AKS. They were templates for a new Soviet spacefaring future, carrying everything from shuttles to even launching them off its back. But with the news of the destruction of the one and only AN-225 in Ukraine, it comes as the end of an era, perhaps even the end of the last of the Soviet Union mega projects. But speaking of space travel, the next one on this list may have inspired a very famous fictional space fighter. No, this is not an X-Wing fighter from the Soviet Star Wars, but rather a Soviet fighter jet from the 1960s. A tail-sitter aircraft, a concept patented by none other than Tesla, the Soviet attempt at this idea was probably the best looking version. A MiG-25 meets Star Wars type of aircraft powered by two engines that could take off and land to any small patch of flat surface. It might have even been the perfect aircraft for the Soviet Navy and the Air Force alike. But ultimately, it never got built, but it's certainly up there as one of the most creative aircraft ever made. But the next one did get built. In July 9th of 1961, it was the Soviet Air Force Day. Spectators were in awe as a completely new supersonic bomber flew over the crowd escorted by two MiG-21s. It had a sleek design powered by 4 engines with a maximum speed of up to Mach 2, and it was unlike anything the West had ever seen. This was the first time that this brand new aircraft was ever presented to the public, leaving Western military analysts debating for years about just how the Soviets managed to create the next generation bomber, even thinking that they had made it nuclear powered. The Mossachev M50 Bounder would become the Soviet Union's future bomber aircraft, able to attack anywhere in the world, and it looked pretty damn cool. But unfortunately, politics made this aircraft go the way of the Dodo. But it wasn't the only aircraft that the Soviets also built a prototype of. This Soviet supersonic bomber has a very special mission: to hunt and destroy US aircraft carriers. Yes, this very fast bomber was designed with strategic missions in mind to level the playing field by firing missiles at the US carrier fleet. These were 4.5-ton missiles flying at over Mach 5 with the option of nuclear or high explosive warheads, made explicitly to absolutely wipe out entire battle groups. And unlike many of the others on this list, this aircraft was actually built and tested, but the Sukhoi T-4 Sotka would not enter production development due to production line issues at the factory. They were simply building too many other jets at the same time. Today, the prototype is actually in the same graveyard right next to the M50, making them both brothers forever. But this isn't the only version of the T-4 that made this list. That's right, the next one is Stealth. This jet gets an honorable mention and is the feature of an upcoming video on the channel. It was a Soviet stealth bomber designed to take advantage of the rapid advances in radar avoiding technology and design, and put the American back in their place once and for all. Looking like a triangle version of the B-2 Spirit, this plane would have the ability to fly at Mach 3, bomb cities to the ground before vanishing back into the sky. As for what happened, we will just have to watch the full video on the channel. The Soviets were already well known for their amazing tandem rotor monster helicopters, and much more crazy ones like the VVP that we had earlier, but they thought that they could do one better. After all, 3 rotors is better than 2. Called the Mi-32, it would be the largest helicopter ever built in the world, comprising of 3 fuselages and 3 powerful motor engines. Weighing a shocking 150 tons, it was an aircraft made to carry, well, pretty much anything, and would have paved the way for the Soviets to conquer the Far East for their country, and perhaps even conquer the United States themselves. And just by comparison, the fuselage was larger than the Airbus A320, so this helicopter was positively huge. Speaking of large helicopters, originally seen as the next step in engineering after the Ka-22 helicopter, this monster rotor craft was more plain than helicopter. With its twin turbojet engines, it could get up to a speed of 550 kilometers per hour, maintaining its lifting capacity of over 20 tons. These engines would also give it a range of around 800 kilometers, which would make it perfect for deploying troops, up to 100 of them, to remote locations from air bases. Models at the time even feature the aircraft taking onboard SAMs or other lightly armored tanks, so you know they meant business. For military use, they included a remote cannon on the nose, turning this into a literal gunship. Likely, had this gone ahead, there would have been the possibility of a more kitted out version with even more armaments. But now it's time for the number one most incredible Soviet black project. In the late 1950s, there were rumors of a radical new aircraft design from deep within the USSR. It would be the most overkill bomber aircraft ever designed, called the Bartini A-57. This bomber would be a flying boat that could fly vertically, carried the biggest nuclear weapons the Soviets could muster, and had its own parasite fighter capable of scouting, defense, and independent strikes. This flying monster could land anywhere from water to desert to snow and ice, and could be refueled from submarines in remote lagoons and lakes, all with only a crew of 3 and a range to reach the distant shores of the United States. But this incredible concept from an even more incredible engineer never happened, and the USSR passed on what could have turned the tide of their nuclear fever. What do you think? What's your favorite in the list? And don't forget to check out the offer from Masterworks with the link in the description and support the channel.